see where I'm coming from with this whole people starting to get scared of leaving their windows open and stuff? Yeah, this is why. Hi friends! So my name is B Carter. This is probably going to be my second uploaded video. I don't know, it's probably going to be a bunch uploaded at the start, like at the very first time, just to kind of get the thing going. But today, we're going to talk about true crime. I really shouldn't be that excited about that. That's a bit weird. So, I have got my adult apple juice and my popcorn. So, because I'm Australian, I decided to start with an Australian serial killer. My serial killer of choice was Edgar Cooke. Edgar Cooke actually was born, raised, and did most of his crimes not too far from where I currently live. I'm from the very northern part of Western Australia. Well, not the very, very northern part, but north. In a country town. It was a country town, it's a city now, but we didn't talk about these things. And so, but I currently live probably a little way south of Mandurah. Mandurah is a city about an hour south of Perth, which is WA's capital city, which is around the parts where all of this happened and where Edgar Cooke became infamous. So, Edgar Cooke is a name that pretty much everybody knows here. So he was actually the last person to be executed in Fremantle prison, which I believe happened in 1974. Ish. Yeah, so, okay, no. So it closed down, it closed down in the 70s. I don't know if it was 1974, but it was definitely the 70s. Fremantle prison is now like a historic, kind of like, it's a museum. Like, I remember going there when I was in year 6. We went on we came to Perth for a week-long camp, and we went to Fremantle prison as like an excursion, field trip kind of thing. And they point out the ghost in the window, and you go into all these like infamous people's cells and stuff. And Edgar Cooke was the last person to get hung there, and he was hung in 1964. He was a bad dude. He was, so back in the day, in like the 50s and 60s, Perth was very much like, I think it was a city, but it was very much like it was communal feeling. Everybody felt safe, everybody, would leave their doors unlocked or their windows open, back before people had aircon, and so, it's hot in Australia. So you leave windows open, like nobody was ever scared, nobody's ever worried about like what was going to happen, until Cookie. Until Cooke happened. So Edgar Cooke, they kind of called him the Night Caller. He was born on the 25th of February in 1931, and he was born in Victoria Park. Victoria Park is a suburb very close to the city centre of Perth, very close to the CBD. It's a nice-ish suburb, as far as I'm aware. I've never spent too long there. I've had friends that have lived there, but I don't know what the area is like. I live very far away. So he was actually the oldest of 3 kids. There's honestly not an awful lot about his siblings at all, which is fine. I could understand that to an extent. His parents did only get married because they fell pregnant with Eric, and then obviously there was some hanky-panky going on in there after. But he was born into a very violent home, so his dad was like a douchebag. He was a douchebag, to the point where his mum worked at like the Como Hotel, and his mum would like sleep in the cots at the hotel to avoid going home to her husband. And Eric would do very much the same thing. Like, he would either wander the streets at night. So his dad's name, he was born to Vivius Thomas Cooke and Christine Cooke, obviously in February of 1931. Now, the thing with Eric He was born with a cleft palate and a hair lip. He did have a couple of surgeries when he was younger, one when he was like 3 months and then one when he was like 3.5 years old. But I mean, it fixed most of it, but he still had like a little deformity. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. Like if you see photos of him and stuff, he's not. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I mean, it wasn't that bad by today's standards. I mean, if you go back to the 50s and stuff, kids were relentless now. Like kids would be relentless back then. Like the slightest like deformity or issue would have been like by these kids. So he was relentlessly bullied. He was relentlessly bullied, and he actually went to 5 different schools. So like changing schools didn't even help. So when he was 6 years old, he was actually expelled from Subiaco State School for stealing from a teacher's purse. Like, I mean, at 6 years old, man. I'm not necessarily saying that the crime was that bad. I mean, obviously, you don't steal and you teach your kids that. But I think 6 years old is a bit young to expel. Like, wouldn't you try to correct his behaviour rather than just I don't know. Anyway, does not matter. So, he was described as a very shy and introverted person, but he was described as extremely intelligent. So teachers, like all throughout his schools and stuff, teachers did know that he had a great aptitude for any subjects that required manual dexterity and retentive memory. So he could recall things, you know. He was very smart like that, but he was very not so clever in other ways. And then he is described to be extremely like accident prone. And this is kind of a part that I'm not entirely sure that I believe. Not that I don't believe it, but like, wouldn't it be, you know, I mean, he lived with an abusive father. And he left school at 14 to help with bills and stuff. Obviously, he was still living at home. I mean, he did go in and out of foster care, and so did his siblings, like throughout his childhood, but he kind of always ended up back with his parents. And so he left school at 14, which was kind of normal back then, to help his family with bills and stuff. So he went and got jobs and whatever. So he's obviously still living with them. He started a delivery boy, but a lot of his jobs put him into hospital. Now he worked at Harrison Scarf Factory. He worked at Harrison Scarf Factory, and he disjointed his nose after being struck in the face by a winch. Well, that's unlucky. That is unlucky. And then at 16, he got a 2nd-degree burn from the blacksmith section at Midland Junction, where he was employed as a hammer boy, and he injured his left thumb and jarred his right hand at the same job. Once Eric hit 17, he did start to revert to petty crime. He did a few break-ins and stuff. He wasn't very clever about it, being that, like, he got caught because of fingerprints. And because of that, he started wearing, like, women's gloves. I shouldn't laugh. He started wearing women's gloves. I'm not entirely sure why he chose women's gloves. And to each their own. Maybe if he accidentally dropped one, they wouldn't be like looking for him because it was a woman's glove, or they would assume it wasn't dropped by the perpetrator because women criminals were very hard to come by back then. Maybe. He was involved in a string of burglary and vandalism offences, and then he also burnt down a church. And he burnt down this church because he wasn't chosen for the choir. Just like that. We'll let that sink in. So when he was 18 years old in March of 1949, he was at Grandma's house, and the police arrested him for his string of petty crime. So he got sentenced to 3 years in prison, but he did only serve 18 months. I have a list of what he got sentenced for. So he got sentenced of 2 counts of stealing, 7 counts of breaking and entering, and 4 counts of arson. So he got out, of prison, of jail, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's called. And he joined the army. Now, oh, yeah, gross. Ew. Okay. So, when he went out of jail, he joined the Australian Army. I don't know what it's like in other countries, if anybody here is watching from another country, if anybody's watching at all. But if you have a record, you're basically not allowed in. That's one of the biggest rules is that you can't be, I suppose, in bed and not able, not physically able and not mentally able, and you can't have a record to join the armed forces. So he obviously hid that, and he was accepted into the Australian Army, and he was very quickly, so he was 21 when he joined, and he was very quickly promoted to Lance Corporal, and that he was taught to use firearms. So okay, keep in mind this was prior to Australia's gun laws. So Australia is very, I suppose, prevalent for its gun laws. I love our gun laws. I have very luckily gone through my entire life with only ever seeing a gun on my dad's hip. That was only when he was in uniform because he was a cop. And even then, it was only a couple of times. If I would go to the station to see him, he was never able to bring it home. Like the guns stay in their lockers or whatever while they're when they come home, they don't bring them. You are allowed to have guns here, but they have to stay in a gun safe and locked up unless they are in use at a hunting range, or you go out hunting or something like that. You are not allowed to just carry them around at all. You have to have a license. It's a very strict process. Our gun laws came into effect in 1996 after the Port Arthur massacre. So this was obviously all before that. So 3 months after his enlistment, they did find out about his petty crime and they discharged him, which is probably fair, I'd say. Don't you think? Right, it's fair. So he was discharged and he wasn't too pleased about it. But in 1953, he got married. So this was not long after he got discharged from the army. And he got married in the Methodist church to someone named Sarah Lavin, who went by the name of Sally. She ended up being really crucial to the case too. So she was a 19-year-old waitress. And they actually went on to have 7 kids. Like, I know that TVs weren't a thing back then, but damn, 7 kids. So they had 4 boys and 3 girls. Again, they have nothing on his kids. There's no names, there's no dates of birth, there's no where are they now, there's none of that. He was then arrested a bunch of times, basically for being a peeping Tom. While he was married and was having all these kids, and he worked as a truck driver and yada yada yada, and he's being arrested for being a peeping Tom. The cops just kind of thought that he was very known to the police, obviously, but they considered him to be harmless. They thought that he was just a weird dude, who was harmless. He was Cookie. He was a local. He was, that he'd been around his entire life, and he was just a harmless peeping Tom. So Sally was cool. Sally actually became, his wife Sally actually became kind of a part of the investigation. She testified and all that good stuff. Thanks, Sally. Now, the thing with the murders, right, was that nobody ever suspected that they were done by the same guy until his murder spree, right? To the point where 2 different people were convicted of 2 of his crimes and weren't exonerated until after A, they had completed their sentences, B, Edgar Cooke had been executed, and C, well, that was it, just A and B. But that's still pretty fucked up, right? We're gonna read a couple quotes from Edgar Cooke to start with, just because I want y'all to know his level of, okay. So he was quoted, I'm going to stop shoving food in my mouth when I'm trying to do this. So he was quoted to have saying, "It was then that this power came over me. It wasn't an impulse, it was stronger than an impulse." He's talking about killing people. And then said, it was as though I was God, and it was like a mantle or like a cloud came over me, and I must use that. I have no words. Okay, so his first known victim, and I say known because I think that she was his first official, like, real murder. Because he did kind of confess to, like, everything. So, now, I do not know how to say this woman's name, and I'm probably going to butcher it. I don't know if it's Penina Bergman, or if it's just Nina, and the P is, like, I don't know. So this is in January of 1959, so Penina Bergman, we're going to call her Penina. So she was originally known as Patricia Gregg, and from Melbourne, and she was born in 1925. And she married, I think it was and she married Gary Berkman in 1949. Although she had already taken on her Jewish faith by that point, so like before they got married, she had already converted and taken on her Hebrew name, which is where Penina Bergman, or Nina Bergman, where Bergman came in. Where Bergman came in. So her marriage did only last like 6 years, and she did end up moving with her son Mark to Perth from Melbourne. So she was living in Mill Point Road in South Perth, and it's really weird to look at these, I'll say these street names and stuff, because Mill Point Road, it's actually an exit off our freeway now. So if you go through the city on the freeway, and you come out on the south side of the city, Mill Point Road's actually an exit, it's a big green sign. It's kind of creepy to know what went down there now, So she lived in South Perth, and she ended up started dating her neighbour. Okay, I'm gonna pronounce. I'm gonna butcher this as well. Fotis, that was his name. He was a Greek radio DJ, and he lived next door to her, and they started dating. And she had some family that she knew that lived in Nedlands, which isn't too far away from South Perth. They would look after Mark while she did some stuff and lived her best life, So on January 30 in 1959, after a night out with Fountis, her son Mark was at the Pascoes, which is kind of a relief. Cooke crept into her bedroom through an open window. You see where I'm coming from with this whole people starting to get scared of leaving their windows open and stuff? Yeah, this is why. Crept into her open window and stabbed her repeatedly with a 17-centimeter diving knife. Now, the thing about this diving knife is it's not like Cooke was an average diver. Well, at least there was no information on that being a thing. So, why, the police wouldn't have even thought, So Penina's body was found by Fountis the next morning. Fountis was obviously a fucking suspect. He was actually immediately a suspect, but he was released because there's just no evidence to say that he did it. I mean, he was the last person to see her alive, but there was no physical evidence to say that he had done the crime. There was nothing in his house, nothing in hers, that kind of thing. So he was let go, and he did actually end up going back to Greece almost immediately after, and never returned. So Mark's father actually ended up taking him back to Melbourne after this happened, obviously, and then 2 years later, they did go back to Israel. I'm assuming is where his dad's from, which would make sense with the whole Jewish faith So this one is Gillian McPherson. She was a Melbourne socialite, obviously living in Perth. She's a great-granddaughter of industrialist and philanthropist Sir McPherson Robertson, who founded the McRobertson Chocolates and an airline, and his money went on to start McRobertson Girls' School in 1934. Okay, so he waited a little while. After Berkman, December 1959, she died. So, like I said, she's a Melbourne socialite. She's a great-granddaughter of some philanthropist dude, Sir McPherson Robertson, who started a chocolate manufacturer, maker, Willy Wonka, and an airline, and then his money went on to fund a girls' school in 1934. She lived in Cottesloe, and she lived in Cottesloe when this happened. Now, these are all kind of suburbs that surround the city. I mean, I suppose Perth was probably pretty small back then. She was struck on the head and body and then stabbed repeatedly with scissors. Like, we've moved on from the diving knife, now we're at scissors. It's like we just picked up the first thing we saw and then like... So, this is where it gets kind of juicy, because this is the first one that somebody else got convicted for. So, Daryl Beamish was a deaf mute that was known to Gillian, and didn't actually live that far away from what I can remember. And he, after being questioned by police, he did confess to the murder, but later he retracted that and said that he said it under duress. So Edgar Cooke actually confessed to this murder as well. And even on on his death walk, or just before, when the priest came in, he said, like, I don't want these people to go after my family and stuff like that, and I really think that, you know, like, you need to understand, I did that. Please, I did that. That was my crime, they are innocent. That sort of shit. But, okay. So the cops decided, no, he's a pathological liar. So he's a pathological liar when it comes to 2 out of the 20 crimes he confessed to, but all the rest he was like, nah mate, that's all the truth. But those 2, because we don't want to be wrong, he's a pathological liar. He's either a pathological liar or he's not. You can't pick which one he's a pathological liar about. Shit doesn't work that way. So, like I said, only 20 of his 22 confessed violent crimes were taken seriously by the police. And unfortunately, the death of Gillian McPherson was one of the ones that was not taken seriously because Daryl Beamish had already taken the fall. So, Beamish spent 15 years in prison for the murder, and he was convicted at 20 years old, which is so sad. I mean, on one hand, you're like, oh my god, that's so young to be locked up. On the other hand, you're like, well, at least it happened while he was young so that he got out when he was 35. But at the end of the day, his whole life would have been ruined. Like, he's a convict. He's a convicted murderer now. Missed out on university and, like, that time of his life. It's just ridiculous. So, Beamish was denied 5 appeals. Okay, this is even after. So this is after Cooke had confessed and been convicted and, well, confessed and been hung for everything else. So he lost 5 appeals to overturn his conviction, but finally he won the right to appeal in 2002. 2002. So just to put this into perspective, all of these crimes happened before my mum was born. So my mum was born in So Edgar Cooke was hung 7 years before my mother was born. This guy won the right to appeal when I was 10. That is a long ass time to wait. Like, come on. His conviction was eventually overturned in 2005, 29 years after he was released. Not even after he was like convicted, after he was released from his 15-year sentence. So what's that? Hold on, let me just math through it. So 44 years. 44 years after he was convicted for a crime he didn't commit. 29 years after he was released from prison, he was finally exonerated. I can't. Next was his murder spree. This is the part that just really fucked people up, you know? So this was actually some years later. It's about, maybe like 3.5 years later. So it was in January 27th of 1963 that his murder spree kind of happened. I will get better at this, I promise. So he shot Nicholas, August, and Rowena Reeves. He shot them with a rifle, a stolen rifle, while they were sitting in the car outside the Cottesloe Civic Centre having a bit of a naughty rendezvous and a drink. The couple did survive, which is super good. So that was one of his, attempted murders. So on the way back to his car, his stolen car, he's twiddling on back and he passes this place. It has like the top of the garage has been like converted into like a balcony, climbs up there, and then he goes in and proceeds to shoot Brian Weir at point blank range. And Brian does survive and he is in a coma, but he does later pass away in 1965, which is a bit of a bummer. I mean, he had so much hope for so long, you know? Then, later on that night in Vincent Street, which is, again, a street in the city, pretty prevalent street in the city, everyone knows it. He shot and killed an 18-year-old vet student by the name of John Sturkey while he was asleep in his bed. He then went to Nedlands, like, Mark was already long gone by this point, but this was like 4 years later. But so on Louise Street at 4 a.m, he shot a 55-year-old retired grocer by the name of George Walmsley. And he died in hospital at 5:35 a.m. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you how good old Cookie, is probably not the right word to use. What happened was, walked up to his door, he's doing a lot of walking. So going past the house actually, and he notices, so George has some friends over, him and his wife, they're getting a bit rowdy at 4 a.m, having some drinks, probably some port or something. Like my parents drink, and it's like that drink that they drink when everything else is gone and they want to keep going. It's the one that comes out just before the sun goes up. And so Eric sees this through the window, and so he just walks up to the door, knocks on it. George answers and shoots him. Of course, that's what you do, apparently. Now, the cops at this point are freaked out. They are freaked out. Like, they somewhat kind of know that this is all connected, but they somewhat kind of don't because everything is so different. So they testified more than 65,000 rifles to try and get the right one, and fingerprinted over 30,000 males over the age of 12. 12. See, but this is the part that I don't get. Right? They already had Edgar Cooke's fingerprints on file, so that's got to mean that they either didn't have the records from back then. I don't really know what the filing system was like or what they did. I mean, I know it's obviously all now stored on a database, but I don't know what it was like back then. But, I mean, they had already arrested him with his fingerprints for his petty crimes when he was like 17. Your fingerprints don't change. So they obviously didn't fingerprint him, and they didn't think anything of him because they just thought he was some petty criminal and who wasn't a threat, apparently, according to the cops. So, yeah, they just didn't see him as a threat. So if they had his fingerprints on file still from the last time and they just didn't look, which I'm not blaming them for. A little bit shit, but like if you were running out of options, would you not just test everything? Not long after that, he started not just killing again, but like not murder sprees as such. So on February 9th, 1963, this one's really sad actually. I mean, they're all really sad, but this is another one that somebody else got convicted for. So Rosemary Anderson, February 9th, 1963, was a guy named John Button's 19th birthday. So he was out with his girlfriend Rosemary Anderson, who was 17 at the time. I was having a night out. It doesn't actually say anything. It doesn't say anything about what they were doing. But they did get into a fight. So they got into a fight. Rosemary just, what girls do, and we just walk away. No. So she starts walking. He follows her a little, keeps telling her to get back in the car. She's like, no. So he stops, gets out of the car, and has a fag, which was very normal back then. And then after a little while, he decides to try again, and he drives up the road a little bit to start following her again. And he drives up and keeps driving, and then he comes across her body laying on the side of the road. She'd been hit by a car. John immediately took her to a doctor's surgery. I don't know the norms back then. He took her to a doctor's surgery, and they immediately transferred her to hospital, obviously, where she died. So basically, the cops took him straight away and were interrogating him for hours, and he says that they ended up punching him in the guts and all that sort of stuff, and it just wasn't very pretty at all. When he turned around and asked them how she was and if she was okay, they then informed him that she was dead. So that's how he found out that she died, which is just horrible. Very nasty, man. And in his emotional state, he basically just told them to write out a confession and he would sign it. And so that's what they did. The cops wrote out a confession for him and he signed it. And then he was sent to death row immediately, apparently. And then when he went on trial, so this is a shocking part. So he was on trial, and when the jury came out, they read a verdict of not guilty. And then the head juror realized that they made a mistake. So there was that split second of freedom. So anyway, he ended up being found guilty, but he was not found guilty of murder. He was found guilty of manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 10 years hard labour with a minimum of 5. So he did obviously eventually get out of prison, and he also was exonerated, but not until February of 2002. He did write a book in 1998 called The Real Killer, Edgar Cooke, which, good for him. And it wasn't, obviously he wrote that in 1998. He wasn't exonerated until 2002. He wrote the book 4 years before he was exonerated. I'm not supposed to laugh. That's very nice. So the next one, her name was Constant Lucy Madrill, but she went by Lucy. She's a 24-year-old social worker. And the dates are kind of iffy with this because one of them said February 10th and then one of them said February 16th. So we're going to go with February 16th, just because it was the most commonly repeated. So on February 16th, Lucy came down the stairs of her flat. I don't really know what a flat is. We don't really call it flats in Australia. Like, you have an apartment or you have a townhouse or you have a unit. So we're going to go with townhouse, unit thing, house. Let's just go with house. Edgar Cooke was robbing her house, and she woke up to find him in there, and he basically kind of panicked, and he struck her over the head and knocked her unconscious, and then he ended up killing her with a lamp cord, strangling her with it. He then, this is what I mean by out of character. He then proceeded to, I'm trying to find another word for this, defile. Yeah, that's a good one. Defile her body He then dragged her out of the house, out of the backyard, and over across to her, like across the bitumen and over to her neighbour's backyard, where he left her with a whiskey bottle that he found in the neighbour's yard, an empty whiskey bottle, cradled in her arms. And there was one report that said that he penetrated her with it as well. But there was like other reports that didn't have that included, so I don't know how true that is. But there was a whiskey bottle that he had her holding for some reason. And then basically the owners of the house next door, who were, I believe they were named the Nobles, they found her in the morning, and it was actually really freaky because they thought that it was their daughter. And so they flipped out, and obviously, I mean, finding a dead body is finding a dead body. It's not like great. So Shirley MacLeod was an 18-year-old babysitter. He actually walked into the house. So it's basically said that he was stood in the hallway of the house in Dalkeith that she was babysitting at, and he was watching her, and he was basically just kind of envious of her life, which I think was the general consensus of why he did this to everybody, was that he was just like, why did my life turn out so shit, you know? And so he was kind of jealous of people having fun, which is like with George, that he walked past them having this great time at 4 a.m. with friends and stuff, and obviously Eric didn't really have that, and he never really had that. He never really had that sense of family or anything, and he just wanted to, I guess, take that away from other people, which obviously isn't the way to go about it, but when you've been, you know, anyway. I'm not going to go into the psychological part of it because I'm not a psychologist. So he was basically stood in the hallway. He was watching her, became really envious and jealous, and ultimately he shot her. He shot her, and the couple that she was babysitting for came home from their night out and found her. I'm not really sure where the kids were when all this happened. Like, sure, I mean, I don't really think that he had a silencer or anything. So maybe they heard it and they just didn't want to come down. They were scared or something. I don't know. So August 16th in 1963, kind of where it all fell down for Cookie, for good old Cookie. So the Keeners, So the Keeners were this elderly couple, and they discovered a rifle in a Geraldton wax bush while they were out for a walk. So they called the cops, obviously. The cops went there, they tested the ballistics on it. It matched to the murder of Shirley MacLeod, the 18-year-old babysitter that we just talked about. So they basically, they got a replica of the rifle, and they put it back. They put it into this wax bush. And they had two papers. So they had two papers run stories to say that they were refocusing their efforts to find the guy to Mount Pleasant and Applecross. To kind of throw them off, you know? When they did that, the police basically just like staked this place out. Like, staked it out. And then on September 1st, at, you know, whatever hours of the morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., somewhere in between there, Cooke actually returned to get the rifle and was arrested on site. And that's how he was caught. October 26 in 1964 was the almighty day that Fremantle Prison saw its last hanging, and Edgar Cooke was put to death. So there's this cop guy, right? Let's call him Mr. Baker because that's what the article called him. I don't know if that's his real name or not. And he basically, like, while Cooke was on his way to the gallows, Mr. Baker went up to him and was like, "Cooke, why'd you do it? What, you know, basically, like, bro." And he said, and I quote, "Mr. Baker, when I have that gun, I'm 10 foot tall and could walk through a wall." Now, the thing that gets me about this, though, right, the part that really gets me, is that he was only actually tried for the willful murder of John Sturkey, who was the 18-year-old vet student, even though the gun was matched to the death of 18-year-old Shirley MacLeod, the gun they used to arrest him. And he confessed to all these other things. And they did, like, they closed the cases and stuff. And yet he was still in the, I mean, I don't know if it was maybe because, like, they had enough and he was going to go to the gallows anyway. So why bother wasting the resources to, like, officially convict him for a bunch of other stuff? Anyway, so he did end up, so he was tried for the willful murder of John Sturkey, and he did end up pleading not guilty, an idiot, on the grounds of insanity. So the jury took 1.5 hours to come to a verdict, and they sent him to be hung. And he died on October 26, 1964, which was before, what was his name? Brian died, about a year before Brian died. And obviously was forever before fucking John and Daryl got exonerated for 2 murders that he committed. So that is the story of one of Australia's worst serial killers. You know, and his wife, that's right, his wife was actually like a staple in this, because when the mass murder, like the murder happened, like the murder spree happened, he was like, he came home and he said to his wife, like, even though he's like, babe, I wasn't here last night, but you know, if I don't have an alibi, they're going to pin this on me because of my record. So if you can just lie for me, that'd be fantastic. And so she went, nah. And she dobbed him in. Like that. Dobbed him in. As soon as they asked her, she's like, nah. He probably did it. He wasn't home that night. So, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if, like, dude, this is very much probably this first true crime video, hopefully the first of many. If you know you've got any criticism for me, anything constructive, please do put it below. I'm trying to get better. Hopefully I will. And I do really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. If you want to press that subscribe button, it would make me super happy. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again. Bye, friends.